Well, look who finally showed up. The one they've been calculating. The one whose patterns just aligned in ways that made someone very important sit up straight, close the door, and pull up every file they have on you. Oh yes, someone high up just connected 3 dots about you, and now they can't stop thinking about what it means. They're not just watching anymore, they're obsessed. And the question burning in their mind, in their late night notes, in their private conversations is this: what the hell did they just see in you? Welcome back, you statistical impossibility, you walking equation that doesn't balance, you glitch in their predictive models. Because something just happened in the background of your life, something you probably didn't even notice, but someone else did. Someone whose job it is to spot patterns, to identify threats, to recognize potential before it fully materializes. And you just lit up their entire dashboard like a Christmas tree in a blackout. 3 seemingly unrelated moments in your life just formed a triangle, and at the center of that triangle is something they've been searching for. Something rare, something dangerous, something they absolutely cannot ignore. Let me paint the picture for you. There's someone sitting in an office right now, or maybe it's a study, maybe it's a corporate tower, maybe it's somewhere you've never even heard of, and they have access to information, to networks, to resources most people don't even know exist. They're not your enemy, not yet anyway, but they're not exactly your friend either. They're a watcher, an analyzer, a decision maker. And their entire world just got disrupted because your name, your face, your energy signature, whatever they're tracking, it just appeared in 3 different places it shouldn't have been. 3 different contexts that individually mean nothing, but together they form a pattern, and patterns tell stories. And your story just became the most interesting thing they've read in years. Dot 1. You survived something you weren't supposed to survive. Maybe it was a betrayal that should have destroyed you. Maybe it was a loss that should have left you hollow. Maybe it was a situation so brutal, so isolating, so completely designed to break you that any normal person would still be in recovery mode 5 years later. But you're not in recovery mode. You're thriving. You're moving. You're building. And that alone caught their attention because survival isn't interesting, but evolution is. You didn't just survive, you adapted, you learned, you weaponized the experience. And now you carry yourself differently, you make decisions differently, you see the world through a lens that most people never develop. And that made them write down your name for the first time. Dot 2, you started showing up in places you're not supposed to be. Not physically, although maybe that too, but energetically, socially, intellectually. You're in conversations you weren't invited to. You're influencing outcomes without trying. You're being mentioned by people who don't even know you personally. Your ideas, your words, your presence is rippling outward in ways that defy normal social physics. And here's the thing, you're not chasing it, you're not forcing it, you're not playing the game the way everyone else plays it. You're just existing at a frequency that makes the game bend around you. And that's when they realized you're not just a survivor. You're a force. You're an anomaly. You're someone whose trajectory doesn't follow the rules. And rule breakers, accidental or otherwise, they always get flagged. Dot 3. You stopped caring about being understood. This is the one that sealed it. This is the moment they knew you were no longer controllable, no longer predictable, no longer safe to ignore, because somewhere along the way, you made a decision, a quiet, internal, irreversible decision. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped defending your choices. You stopped needing validation from people who couldn't comprehend your journey. And that shift, that subtle but seismic shift in your energy, it registered. Because most people spend their entire lives seeking approval, chasing acceptance, molding themselves to fit. But you stopped. And when someone stops caring about being understood, they become untouchable. They become unmanageable. They become dangerous to any system built on compliance and predictability. And you just exited the system without making a sound. So now here they are, this person high up, this observer with power, and they're staring at these 3 dots. Survival that looks like evolution. Presence that defies logic. And detachment that signals mastery. And when you connect those dots, when you draw the lines between them, you don't get a victim. You don't get a follower. You don't get someone they can categorize and file away. You get a wild card. You get a future disruptor. You get someone who's going to change the game, whether they mean to or not. And that's why they're obsessed. Because they need to know, are you an asset? Are you a threat? Are you someone they should invest in or someone they should contain? Are you the next big thing or the next big problem? And the worst part for them, they can't tell yet. You're too new to this frequency. You're too raw. You're still becoming. And that uncertainty, that's what's keeping them up at night. But here's what they don't know. Here's what they can't see yet because it hasn't fully formed. You're neither an asset nor a threat. You're something else entirely. You're a catalyst. You're the stone that gets thrown into the pond, not to sink, not to float, but to create ripples that change everything around you. You're not trying to build an empire. You're not trying to take anyone down. You're just living at a frequency that rewrites the rules for everyone nearby. And that makes you more dangerous than any intentional disruptor could ever be. Because you're not motivated by ego. You're not driven by revenge. You're not chasing power. You're just being. And being at this level, it's magnetic. It's contagious. It's unstoppable. They saw you survive what breaks others, and they wondered how. They saw you show up where you don't belong, and they wondered why. They saw you stop caring about their opinions, and they realized you're no longer playing their game. And now they're obsessed because they can't predict what you'll do next. They can't calculate your next move. They can't model your trajectory. You've become the variable they can't control, the factor they can't account for, the anomaly in the data that makes all their projections useless. And in a world where control is currency and prediction is power, you've just become the most valuable, most dangerous, most fascinating thing on their radar. And they have no idea whether to fear you, study you, recruit you, or just stay the hell out of your way while you ascend. Let's go deeper into what happens now, 'cause this isn't just about being noticed. This isn't about some random person thinking you're interesting for 5 minutes and then moving on. No. When someone high up connects dots about you, when they see a pattern that triggers something in their strategic mind, it sets off a chain reaction. First they observe, then they analyze, then they start asking questions. Quiet questions, careful questions. Questions asked to the right people in the right way. They start pulling threads, looking for more data points, trying to build a complete picture of who you are and what you represent. And here's the thing, you won't see any of this happening. You won't get a notification. You won't receive an email. You'll just start noticing that things are different. Opportunities will appear out of nowhere. Doors that were locked for years will suddenly crack open. People who never gave you a second glance will start paying attention. Conversations will find you instead of you having to chase them. Resources will materialize, connections will form, and you'll wonder, is this luck? Is this timing? Is this just life finally working in my favor? And the answer is no. This is what happens when someone with access, someone with influence, someone with the ability to move pieces on the board decides you're worth investing in. They won't approach you directly, not yet, maybe never, but they'll clear paths. They'll create openings, they'll engineer circumstances that allow you to rise, because they want to see what you do. They want to watch how you handle opportunity. They want to know if their hypothesis about you is correct. Are you really what you appear to be, or are you just another false positive? But there's another possibility, a darker one. What if connecting those 3 dots didn't make them want to help you? What if it made them want to neutralize you? What if they saw your survival, your presence, your detachment, and thought, this person is a threat to the current structure? This person, if left unchecked, will disrupt systems we've spent decades building. This person will inspire others to break free. This person will expose cracks we've worked hard to hide. And we can't allow that. So instead of clearing paths, they start placing obstacles. Instead of creating opportunities, they engineer setbacks. Instead of elevating you, they try to contain you. Not violently, not obviously, but strategic. A delayed opportunity here, a canceled plan there, a relationship that suddenly falls apart, a project that mysteriously fails, and you'll feel it. You'll feel the resistance. You'll feel the invisible walls closing in, and you'll wonder why everything suddenly got harder, why progress suddenly slowed, why doors that were opening are now slamming shut. And this is where most people break. This is where most people assume they did something wrong, that they're not good enough, that the universe is against them. They internalize the resistance, they shrink back, they dim their light, they play smaller, they go back to being manageable, predictable, safe. And the person who connected those dots, they smile. Because the threat has been neutralized, the anomaly has been corrected. The system is stable again, but you're not most people. You've been here before. You've felt resistance before. You've faced walls before, and every single time you found a way through. Not around, not under, not by asking permission. Through. By refusing to accept the narrative that you don't belong at the level you're reaching for. By understanding that resistance isn't a sign you're on the wrong path, it's confirmation you're on the right one. Because easy paths don't lead anywhere worth going. Comfort doesn't build legends. Safety doesn't create transformation. So whether they're trying to elevate you or contain you, the result is the same. You become more, you become sharper, you become undeniable. Because observation, whether friendly or hostile, it forges you. It forces you to become conscious of your power. It makes you aware of your impact. It reveals that you're no longer invisible, no longer insignificant, no longer someone who can be ignored. You're on the radar now. And once you're on the radar, there's no going back to anonymity. There's no return to smallness. There's only forward. And forward means owning every single thing they saw in you. the survival that looks like evolution, the presence that defies explanation, the detachment that signals mastery. You don't shrink from it, you don't hide from it, you embody it fully. Because if someone high up is obsessed with you, it means you've already won. You've already transcended. You've already become the thing they spend their lives searching for. Proof that the system can be beaten. Proof that transformation is real. Proof that some people are simply built different. Now let's talk about what they saw, specifically. Because connecting 3 dots isn't random. It's pattern recognition. And the pattern they recognized in you, it's ancient. It's archetypal. It's the pattern of the phoenix, the outcast who becomes the ruler, the wounded healer, the one who walks through fire and comes out holding flames. They saw someone who fell and didn't stay down. They saw someone who lost everything and built something better from nothing. They saw someone who was betrayed, abandoned, dismissed, and instead of becoming bitter, became better. And that trajectory, that specific arc, it's rare. Most people who go through what you went through, they don't make it out. They get stuck in victim mode, they build their identity around their pain, they weaponize their trauma as an excuse for why they can't succeed. But you didn't do that. You alchemized it. You used the darkness as fuel. You turned your scars into a roadmap. And now you move through the world with a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've already survived the worst. And people feel that, especially people who are trained to spot it. They also saw your influence growing without effort. And this is key. You're not trying to be influential. You're not crafting a personal brand. You're not posting motivational quotes with sunset backgrounds, trying to build a following. You're just living your truth, speaking your mind, showing up authentically. And somehow, people are drawn to that. Your words land differently. Your presence shifts rooms. Your energy affects people in ways you don't even notice. And that's organic power. That's real magnetism. That's the kind of influence that can't be manufactured or bought. It can only be earned through lived experience and internal alignment. And when someone high up sees that kind of authentic influence emerging, they pay attention, because most influence in this world is artificial. It's bought, it's manipulated, it's propped up by algorithms and marketing budgets, but yours isn't. Yours is raw, yours is real, and real influence, it's the most dangerous kind, because it can't be controlled. It spreads like wildfire. It inspires movements. It topples empires. And then there's your detachment. This is the one that really scares them, because detached people can't be manipulated. You can't bribe someone who doesn't need your money. You can't threaten someone who's already lost everything. You can't shame someone who's made peace with their past. You can't control someone who's stopped seeking your approval, and you've reached that state. Not through spiritual bypassing, not through toxic positivity, not through pretending you don't care, but through genuine internal liberation. You've done the work. You've faced your shadows. You've integrated your pain. You've released your need to be liked, to be understood, to be validated by people who don't have the capacity to see you fully. And now you exist in a state of sovereign presence. You're not reactive. You're not desperate. You're not grasping. You're just here, fully here, in your power, in your truth, in your becoming. In that state, it's magnetic and terrifying in equal measure. Magnetic to those who recognize it, terrifying to those who've built their power on controlling others. So when they connected these three dots, survival as evolution, presence as influence, detachment as mastery, they didn't just see a person, they saw a phenomenon. They saw someone who's operating outside the normal parameters of human behavior. They saw someone who's rewriting their own code in real time. They saw someone who's becoming something the system wasn't designed to contain. And that's why they're obsessed. Because you represent possibility. You represent threat. You represent everything they've been told doesn't exist. The self-made phoenix. The authentic leader. The sovereign being who needs nothing from the world but gives everything to their purpose. And they need to know. Can you be weaponized? Can you be contained? Can you be predicted? Or are you truly free? And if you're truly free, what does that mean for everyone else who's still trapped in the game? What does your existence say about their choices? What does your freedom reveal about their chains? Here's what happens next, and this is where you need to pay attention, because the game is about to change. Once someone high up becomes obsessed with you, once they've connected those dots and started watching your moves, you enter a new phase of existence, a phase where every decision carries more weight, where every action creates ripples you can't fully see, where your responsibility to yourself expands because you're no longer just living your life. You're setting an example. You're creating a blueprint. You're proving that another way is possible. And people are watching, not just the person high up, but everyone in their network, everyone they've mentioned you to. Everyone who's curious about this anomaly they can't stop talking about. You've become a case study, a reference point, a living testament to something most people have stopped believing in. Transformation without compromise, success without selling out, power without corruption. And this is where most people fumble. This is where the pressure gets too intense, because suddenly you're aware that you're being observed, and that awareness changes how you move. You start second-guessing yourself. You start performing instead of being. You start trying to live up to an image instead of continuing to evolve authentically. And the moment you do that, the moment you start playing to an audience, you lose the very thing that made you interesting in the first place. Your authenticity, your rawness, your refusal to be anything other than exactly who you are. So here's the test. Can you continue being yourself even when you know someone powerful is watching? Can you make the hard choices, the unpopular choices, the choices that align with your truth even when those choices might disappoint your observers? Can you stay sovereign even when the stakes get higher? Because that's what they're really testing. They want to know if your power is real or if it's just a phase. They want to see if you'll fold under pressure or if you'll double down on your authenticity. Let me tell you what they're hoping to see. They're hoping to see consistency. They're hoping to see someone who doesn't change based on who's watching. They're hoping to see integrity in action. Decisions that align with values even when no one's looking. Boundaries that don't shift based on opportunity. A moral compass that doesn't spin just because someone dangled something shiny in front of you. Because people at high levels, they've seen everything. They've seen the fakers, the performers, the ones who talk a big game but crumble under pressure. They laughed when you crawled. They mocked when you burned. They cheered when you fell. But now, Now you rise, and they remain in the ashes, choking on the smoke of their own mediocrity. Funny, isn't it? The way they never saw you coming, the way they smirked as you stumbled, whispering behind your back, convinced you'd never make it out alive. They wanted you to stay beneath them, weak, small, predictable, but life has a sick sense of humor, because now you're standing at the top, and they can't even look you in the eye. Oh, the irony. The same voices that called you nothing now stutter when they say your name. The same hands that never reached to pull you up now claw at your shadow, desperate for a piece of what they once ridiculed. But it's too late. The door is closed. The bridge burned to the ground. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them a glance. You owe them nothing. A phoenix doesn't ask permission to rise. It doesn't beg the ashes to understand why it left them behind. It simply burns and ascends. Not all storms come to destroy. Some come to clear the path, but they never saw the storm inside you, did they? The quiet destruction, the silent rebuilding. While they slept soundly in their comfort, you were awake, tearing yourself apart, piece by piece, only to stitch yourself back together, stronger, sharper, untouchable. They didn't notice when you started pulling away, when the late-night talks turned into silence, when their laughter felt hollow, when your patience ran thin, and the things that once entertained you now felt childish, pointless. You were growing, evolving, but they stayed exactly the same. You tried, didn't you? You tried to bring them with you, gave them a map, pointed to the way out, but they laughed in your face, called you obsessed, called you crazy. And maybe you are, because only the insane push past limits, only the unhinged break free, while the rest settle for cages with open doors. You became the wolf. They stayed the sheep. You howled at the moon while they shivered in the dark, afraid of the very thing that set you free. And now, when they look at you, they don't see the friend they once knew. They see something else, something unpredictable, something dangerous. But here's the truth they won't admit. They envy you. They resent you. Because deep down, they know they had the same chance you did. The same nights, the same hours. But instead of sharpening their teeth, they kept grazing. And now, they hate that you made it out, while they stayed behind. Knowledge is a curse when you're surrounded by the blind. You see everything they refuse to. The patterns, the traps, the ticking time bombs hidden beneath their feet. But when you try to warn them, they laugh, call you paranoid, call you arrogant, and then they walk straight into the fire, screaming for help when it's too late. You could have saved them. You wanted to save them. But saving someone who doesn't want to be saved, that's like screaming at a drowning man, only to watch him let the waves take him. You held out a hand, you gave them the path, and what did they do? They spit in your face, took the map, and set it on fire. You learned the hard way. That wisdom doesn't bring peace. It brings isolation. It separates you, makes you see too much, feel too much, know too much. And once you see the truth, you can never go back, never unsee, never unlearn. It's a one-way road, and the farther you walk, the fewer people you recognize. You speak and they don't understand. You warn and they dismiss you. They call you different like it's an insult, when deep down they know you've become something they can't control, something they can't keep small, and that terrifies them. Because if you could break free, What's stopping them? Ah, but there it is. The real reason they reject you. Not because they can't change, but because they won't. Because it's easier to pretend the world is simple than to admit they've wasted years being blind. And you remind them of that. You remind them that they could have done more, and they'd rather hate you than face themselves. So let them talk, let them mock, let them laugh in their ignorance. And when the world collapses on top of them, when they finally see the truth you saw long ago, they'll remember the one person who tried to warn them. And by then, you'll be too far ahead to hear their screams. They loved the weaker version of you. The moment you changed, they turned, smiled in your face when you were easy to control, when you fit inside their little box. But the second you started thinking for yourself, the second you outgrew the script they wrote for you, they flipped, called you selfish, called you cold. Funny how that works, huh? The same people who once claimed to love you now whisper behind your back. The same ones who swore they'd always support you now roll their eyes when they hear your name. You didn't betray them. You didn't harm them. All you did was evolve. And for that, they treat you like a villain. Because here's the truth they'll never say out loud. They needed you weak. They liked you confused, dependent, seeking their approval. You growing meant them shrinking. You becoming powerful meant them losing their grip. And instead of rising with you, instead of clapping for your success, they chose resentment. They chose to watch from the shadows, arms crossed, waiting for you to fail. But you won't. And that kills them. Because deep down, they hoped your wings would break mid-flight, hoped life would humble you, knock you back into their world where you belonged. But you don't belong there anymore. You're not the same. You're not one of them. They say you've changed like it's a crime, like you weren't supposed to grow, like you weren't meant to shed the skin of your past and step into something greater. They say you're arrogant, that you think you're better than them, but that's their insecurity talking. Because when you walk into the room, your presence reminds them of everything they could have been. And so they turn, pretend they never knew you, rewrite the story so they can play the victim. But let them talk, let them twist, let them throw dirt on your name, because the deeper they bury you, the stronger you rise. And when they finally realize what they lost, when they see the empire you built without them, it'll be too late, and you'll be too far ahead to care. A king cannot lower his crown just to make others comfortable. But damn, some nights you think about it. You think about the ones you left behind. The voices that once laughed with you now turned silent. The hands you used to shake now clenched in quiet resentment. You didn't mean to outrun them, but here you are, alone at the top. And it eats at you, doesn't it? The guilt. The weight of knowing that while you climbed, they stayed. While you sacrificed, they settled. You wonder if you should have slowed down, if you should have waited, if you should have reached back one more time to pull them forward. But deep down, you already know the answer. You tried, and they didn't move. You spoke, but they didn't listen. You led, but they didn't follow. You showed them the way, but they refused to walk. And that's not on you. A leader isn't someone who drags people forward. A leader walks. A leader sets the pace. A leader moves. And those meant to rise, they'll rise. The rest, they were never coming. Still, it stings. The empty chairs at the table, the phone calls that stopped, the way their eyes don't meet yours anymore, like looking at you hurts too much, not because you harmed them, but because you became proof of what they could have been. And people hate mirrors that show them the truth. So they call you heartless, say you forgot where you came from, that you abandoned them like you owe them your success. But tell me, did they ever lose sleep for you? Did they ever bleed for you? Did they ever sacrifice, risk, and claw their way through hell just to see you win? No. Then why the hell should you feel guilty for doing what they never had the courage to do? This is the cost of rising, of leading, of stepping into the unknown while others stay chained to the past. And you can either carry the weight of their guilt, or you can keep walking. Because a king doesn't beg his people to follow. A king doesn't shrink to make them feel safe. A king walks, and the strong, the worthy, will meet him at the top. They say it's lonely at the top, but the view is unmatched. Down below, they move like ants, trapped in routines and fears, in the cages they built for themselves. You used to walk among them, speak their language, share their dreams, but the higher you climbed, the quieter the voices became. The air grew thinner, and one day you looked around and realized you were alone. Not because you wanted to be, not because you chose to be, but because no one else dared to climb. They made excuses. They clung to comfort. They watched you rise with admiration at first, then confusion, then resentment, as if your success was a personal attack, as if your elevation was proof of their failure. You've climbed too high. They refuse to leave the ground, so now they throw stones hoping to knock you down. They call you arrogant, distant, changed, but they never question why they stayed the same. They never ask why they feared the climb. They'd rather convince themselves you lost your way than admit they were too afraid to find theirs. The truth is, leadership isn't a throne surrounded by admirers. It's a battlefield of whispers and daggers, of outstretched hands that only want to take. They smile, they cheer, they shake your hand until they realize they'll never reach your level. And then the applause stops. The warmth fades. And suddenly, you are not their hero, you are their threat. So you learn to stand alone, to feast at a table with empty chairs, to speak words that only a few will ever understand. And at first it stings. At first you wonder if it's worth it. But then you look at the view. You see what they will never see. You know what they will never know. And in that moment you realize loneliness isn't the price. It's the proof. Because if you're truly leading, if you're truly breaking limits, setting the standard, becoming something more, then of course you'll be alone. No one else had the courage to follow. No one else was willing to burn for it. But that's fine, that's perfect. Because the few who are meant to stand beside you, they'll find their way. The rest, they'll stay exactly where they are, watching you from below, wondering what it's like to breathe at your level. You cannot save someone who enjoys drowning. You can throw them a rope, scream their name, dive into the depths to pull them up, but if they like the darkness, if they choose to stay under, all you'll do is sink with them. And that's the mistake you made, isn't it? You thought they wanted to be saved. You thought they wanted to rise. You spent years pouring yourself into them, giving them wisdom they never used, opportunities they never took. You cut yourself open to feed them, only to watch them starve themselves by choice, and you hated it. Not just because they stayed the same, but because they blamed you for changing. They see your success as betrayal, like your growth was a personal insult. Like the second you stepped forward, you were leaving them behind on purpose. But here's the ugly truth. They were never planning to walk with you. They were waiting for you to stop, to hesitate, to turn back. And the second you didn't, they resented you for it. It's a toxic cycle. You try to lift them, they pull you down. You try to show them the light, they shut their eyes. You spend your energy dragging them forward only to realize they were never planning to move. They don't want to be saved. They want you to stay small enough so they don't have to feel weak. So you have two choices. Keep drowning with them or cut the rope. And I know how hard that is. You love them, you care, you want to see them win. But listen to me, you cannot help someone who refuses to help themselves. You cannot break yourself into pieces just to make someone whole. So stop trying. Stop bleeding for those who won't even lift a finger for you. Stop wasting your breath on those who have already chosen their grave. Let them go. Let them stay. Let them talk. Let them cry. Let them hate. But you walk. And when they realize you were the only one who ever tried to pull them up, it'll be too late. A lion does not concern itself with the opinions of sheep. It does not beg for approval. It does not explain its roar, does not shrink to make others comfortable. It walks and the world moves around it. It exists. And that alone demands respect. But you were taught to ask permission, to seek validation, to prove your worth instead of knowing it. They told you to be likable, to be agreeable, to fit in. But fitting in has a cost, and that cost is your power. Because the moment you crave their approval, you give them control. You put your self-worth in their hands, waiting for them to hand it back. And they won't. They never will. Because the second they see you doubt yourself, they own you. So you stop asking, you stop explaining, you stop waiting for them to see your value. Instead, you become undeniable. You let your presence speak before you do. You let your actions burn so loud that words are no longer needed. And when they question you, when they whisper, when they doubt, you don't justify. You watch. You smile. You move. Because self-respect doesn't come from them. It comes from you. The way you carry yourself. The way you refuse to be swayed. The way you walk into a room and own the space without saying a word. That terrifies them. Because people don't fear noise, they fear certainty. They fear someone who doesn't need their approval to exist. And that's where the power is. In the silence, in the calm, unshakable knowing that you don't need to be liked. You don't need to be understood. You don't need them to clap, to cheer, to agree, because they will follow or they will fade. And either way, you win. The past is a story already written, ink dried, pages turned. You can read it, regret it, rip it apart in rage, but you can't rewrite it. And that's where most people get stuck, staring at a book they can't change instead of picking up the pen that's right in front of them. Because the future, that is unwritten. That is yours. A blank page, a waiting canvas, a beast that only you can tame. No one else holds the pen. No one else decides what comes next. But here's the thing. Most people don't write their own story. They let others do it for them. They let the past hold the ink, let society shape the lines, let fear dictate the plot. But you're different. You've tasted the fire of change. You've seen what happens when you stop following their script. You know what it means to take control. And That terrifies them, because the second you realize no one decides your worth but you become unstoppable, uncontrollable, a force they can no longer define. That's why they'll try to pull you back, whisper in your ear, tell you that your past defines you, that you're not meant for greatness, that your story has already been told. But listen to me. History doesn't remember the ones who played it safe. It doesn't honor the ones who followed the rules. It remembers those who dared to be different. So stop letting old chapters define you. Stop letting their words shape your ending. Stop waiting for permission to become something greater. Pick up the pen. Write something dangerous, something bold, something that makes them remember your name, because this time, you're the one telling the story. They will talk about you. They will twist your name. They will rewrite your story to fit their comfort, to justify their failure. But you don't flinch. You don't beg to be understood. You don't water yourself down just to be digestible. Because leaders don't ask to be followed, they command it. And this is the part where the divide becomes permanent, where you leave behind the ones who never wanted to grow, where you stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand you. Let them call you arrogant. Let them call you insane. The lion doesn't stop walking just because the sheep are afraid. You weren't made to be liked. You weren't made to fit in. You weren't made to sit at their table, nodding along, pretending to be one of them. You were made to build your own kingdom, to burn the old rules and carve your name into the walls of history. And that makes people uncomfortable. So let them be uncomfortable. Let them whisper. Let them stare in fear or awe. But whatever you do, don't shrink. Don't apologize. Don't betray your own evolution just to make them feel safe. Because the world does not belong to the ones who hesitate. It belongs to the ones who dare to lead. Someone in a suit just leaned forward across their pristine desk, adjusted their expensive glasses, and asked the question they thought would corner you. Who trained you? And the air in that room changed, didn't it? Because they expected a name, a program, a certificate, some traceable lineage they could verify and categorize and file away in their neat little database. They expected you to say a mentor's name, recite some institutional pedigree, hand them the receipt for your evolution like you bought it at a strip mall seminar. But you just smiled that smile, the one that makes their handwriting pause mid-signature, and said the only truth that matters. Nobody did. And that's when their confusion shifted into something else, something that looked like fear wearing a business casual mask, because right there in that moment they realized they were sitting across from something they couldn't track, couldn't predict, couldn't control through normal channels. See, they don't know what to do with people like you, the self-forged ones, the ones who weaponized their isolation and turned abandonment into a research laboratory. They have protocols for institutional graduates, processes for certified professionals, frameworks for people who learned inside approved systems. But you learned in the basement of your own breakdown. Studied in the University of nobody giving a single solitary damn. Earned your degree in the school of figure it out or die trying. There's no accreditation board for that curriculum, no alumni network for people who taught themselves mastery while everyone else was getting participation trophies. You didn't have a coach. You had consequence. You didn't have a trainer. You had survival instinct, with a learning curve that would snap most people's minds like breadsticks. And now, here you are sitting in their office, their boardroom, their interview space, carrying skills they can't source and knowledge they can't verify. And it's driving them absolutely insane, because their entire system is built on traceability, on knowing where things come from so they can predict where they're going. But you're the glitch in that algorithm, the variable that doesn't compute, the answer that breaks their equation. They wanted to hear about universities, about programs, about some recognizable institution that would let them relax and think, okay, we understand this person, we can measure them against known standards, we can predict their ceiling. Instead, they got you, unmeasured and unmeasurable, with a skill ceiling that disappears into clouds they can't even see. Let me tell you what really happened in those years when nobody was training you, when you were supposedly falling behind while everyone else collected their certificates and credentials. You were learning different lessons, the kind they don't teach in accredited programs. You learned how to build systems from broken parts, how to extract education from failure, how to turn every setback into a case study and every betrayal into research data. While they were memorizing approved curricula, you were deconstructing reality itself, teaching yourself to see patterns in chaos, to find structure in destruction, to weaponize understanding that came from actual survival rather than simulated scenarios. You became dangerous not because someone handed you knowledge, but because you hunted it down in the wild, dragged it back bleeding and consumed it raw. They thought you were lost during those years, those stretches where you disappeared from social feeds, stopped updating your professional profile, went silent on all the platforms where people perform their progress. They assumed you were struggling, failing, falling behind the curve, while everyone else networked their way up corporate ladders and collected impressive titles. But you weren't lost. You were learning in ways they couldn't comprehend, ways that don't show up on resumes or LinkedIn endorsements. You were studying human behavior in its rawest form, watching how people move when they think nobody's watching, learning psychological warfare from the front lines of your own relationships, mastering emotional intelligence through baptism by fire rather than weekend workshops. And the beautiful, terrifying truth is this: you learned faster and deeper than any of their institutional products ever could. Because when survival is your teacher, every lesson lands with permanent impact. When reality is your curriculum, there's no grade inflation, no curve, no do-overs. You either learned or you didn't make it to the next day, and somehow you're still here, which means you learned everything they tried to teach their students, except you learned it true, learned it bone deep, learned it in ways that can't be unlearned, even if you wanted to forget. You became the kind of educated their institutions can't produce, the kind of skilled their programs can't certify, the kind of dangerous their background checks can't detect. So when that person in the suit asks who trained you with that skeptical tone, like your abilities must have come from somewhere, they can verify and validate. What they're really asking is, how do we categorize you? How do we measure you against our known standards? How do we predict whether you'll fit inside our system? And when you tell them nobody trained you, what you're really saying is, I'm unpredictable. I'm unmeasurable. I built myself from scratch using materials you don't recognize and methods you wouldn't approve. And I'm about to show you what happens when someone learns outside your permission structures. That's the problem they're facing. Not a resume gap or missing credentials, but the existential crisis of encountering competence they can't explain. They need origin stories, these people, these gatekeepers of conventional success, because origin stories let them feel safe. If they know where you learned something, they can predict your limitations, anticipate your blind spot, understand your ceiling. But you don't have an origin story they recognize, you have an origin myth, something that sounds impossible when told in full, something that makes them uncomfortable because it suggests their entire framework for understanding development and skill acquisition might be incomplete. You're the proof that their system isn't the only path, that institutional validation isn't the only route to mastery, that sometimes the most devastating competence comes from people who had to teach themselves because nobody else would. Nobody would. Watch their faces when you explain, when you tell them about learning negotiation from having nothing to trade, about mastering persuasion from needing to survive conversations with people who wanted you gone, about developing strategic thinking from having to outmaneuver betrayal with no resources except your mind. Watch how their expressions shift from professional interest to something else, something that looks like they're recalculating everything they thought they knew about talent development, because you're describing an education that sounds like trauma, skills that sound like survival mechanisms, expertise that came from places they've never had to visit and hope they never will. And yet here you are, demonstrably capable, undeniably skilled, impossible to dismiss despite checking none of their boxes. The real question isn't who trained you, but rather how did someone with no formal training become this effective? And the answer to that question threatens their entire worldview. Because if you can become this good, this sharp, this strategically brilliant without their programs and institutions and certified trainers, then what does that say about the value of those systems? What does it mean when someone who learned in isolation outperforms people who paid 6 figures for Ivy League educations? What does it suggest about human potential when the person who had nothing but time and pain and necessity develops skills that surpass carefully curated institutional curricula? You're not just a person in their office. You're a philosophical crisis, wearing business casual and answering their questions with dangerous calm. Here's what they won't admit, can't admit, even to themselves, in those quiet moments when they review your file and try to make sense of the discrepancy between your background and your demonstrated abilities. They're threatened by you, fundamentally deeply threatened, not because you're aggressive or confrontational, but because you represent everything their system can't control. You're the proof that merit can develop outside their pipelines, that excellence can emerge from places they never look, that their gatekeeping doesn't actually determine who becomes exceptional. You're the nightmare scenario for every institution that profits from being the supposed sole source of legitimate expertise. Because you learned without them, succeeded without them, became formidable despite them, and now you're in their space, their territory, playing their game, except you're playing it with rules you wrote yourself using strategies they never taught because they don't know those strategies exist. You're speaking their language, but with an accent they can't place. One that comes from learning the hard way, in dark places where theory dies and only what actually works survives. Every answer you give is correct, but arrives from angles they didn't anticipate. Every solution you propose is effective, but uses frameworks they never studied. You're functionally multilingual in ways they can't teach, fluent in dialects of competence that don't exist in their approved textbooks. And it's making them deeply uncomfortable, in ways they can't articulate without sounding afraid. They wanted to ask, Who trained you so they could call that person, verify your claims, check your references, make sure you're legitimate according to their standards? But there's nobody to call, no institution to verify with, no reference who can vouch for your journey, because your journey was solo, brutal, unwitnessed except by you and the silence that watched you rebuild yourself, night after night after night. You're unreferenced, and that makes you unreliable in their eyes, until they see you perform, until they watch you solve problems they thought were unsolvable, until they witness you navigate complexity they assumed required years of formal training. Then the question changes, shifts from who trained you to something more desperate. How do we keep you? But here's the part they really can't handle, the aspect of this whole dynamic that keeps them up at night, reviewing security footage to see if you're really human. You don't need them. Not really. Not in any way that gives them leverage. Because when you train yourself, when you forge your own skills in the fire of necessity, you don't develop dependency on institutions or systems or approval from authorities. You learn to be self-sufficient in ways that make you fundamentally dangerous to any organization that relies on controlling resources and access to maintain power. They can't dangle credentials you don't have, can't threaten to revoke certifications you never earned, can't leverage institutional relationships you never built. You're frictionless in their control systems, slipping through every mechanism they use to manage normal employees. And the skills you have, the ones that make them ask questions with voices that shake just slightly, those skills came from a place they can't replicate or reproduce. They can't package your learning journey into a training program, can't distill your development into a workshop series, can't commodify the transformation that happens when someone is forced to become their own teacher, their own mentor, their own entire educational infrastructure. What you learned was custom built for your survival, perfectly calibrated to your specific challenges, impossible to standardize because it emerged from chaos rather than curriculum. Your bespoke competence in a mass production world, handcrafted excellence in an assembly line industry. So when they lean back in their expensive chairs, processing your answer, trying to reconcile "nobody trained me" with everything they've just witnessed about your capabilities, they're experiencing cognitive dissonance that borders on existential crisis. Because every framework they have for understanding professional development, every model they use to evaluate talent, every assumption they hold about how skills are acquired, all of it breaks when confronted with you. You're the exception that disproves their rule, the outlier that suggests their bell curve is incomplete, the data point that doesn't fit any of their models and can't be dismissed as statistical noise because you're too effective, too undeniable, too obviously operating at levels they respect even as they struggle to explain. Let's talk about what actually happened during your training. The real curriculum you survived while they were collecting certificates in climate-controlled classrooms. You learned emotional regulation not from therapy sessions, but from needing to stay calm while your world collapsed. Developed stress management not through wellness seminars, but through maintaining functionality while everything burned. Mastered focus not from productivity courses, but from having to think clearly when chaos was the only constant. You learned patience from having no choice but to wait. Learned persistence from having no option except to continue. Learned resilience from breaking and rebuilding so many times that eventually you just stayed in perpetual reconstruction mode, always adapting, always evolving, always becoming whatever the next challenge required. They teach conflict resolution in their programs, Spend weeks on case studies and role-playing exercises designed to simulate difficult conversations. You learned conflict resolution from actual conflicts, where simulation wasn't an option, where the wrong word could end relationships or opportunities or safety itself. You learned to read rooms not from books about body language, but from needing to detect danger before it had time to announce itself. Learn to navigate power dynamics not from organizational behavior textbooks, but from surviving situations where every interaction was a negotiation for basic respect. Your education was live fire training from day one. No practice rounds, no safety protocols, just survive or don't. And somehow you're still here, which means you got very, very good at things their students only theorize about. And here's the thing that really separates you from their institutional products. You learned to learn. Developed metacognition that turns every experience into education. When their trained professionals encounter something outside their curriculum, they freeze. Look for the relevant chapter. Search for the approved protocol. When you encounter the unknown, you catalog it. Dissect it, extract principles from it, add it to your ever-expanding internal database of how reality actually works. You're not executing learned behaviors, you're generating novel solutions in real time. Because your training was never about memorizing right answers, but about developing the capacity to find answers that don't exist yet. You're not educated, you're educational. A living learning system that treats existence itself as continuous research. Watch what happens now. Watch how this dynamic plays out as they try to integrate you into their systems while simultaneously trying to figure out how you work. They'll assign you projects designed to test your limits, except you won't have the limits they expect. Because your capabilities weren't built inside artificial constraints. They'll try to mentor you using their frameworks, and watch in confusion as you outpace their mentorship, not because you're smarter, but because you learn different, process different, adapt in ways their models don't account for. They'll attempt to measure your performance against their metrics, and discover their metrics weren't designed for people who learned outside their parameters, like trying to measure quantum particles with rulers. The truly beautiful part comes when they realize they can't replicate you, can't take what you did and turn it into a training program for other people, because your path only works for people in your specific circumstances. Your development only happens under your exact pressures. Your transformation only occurs when there's literally no other option except evolve or perish. They can't market, strip away all support systems, and force someone to teach themselves under extreme duress as a professional development strategy. They can't standardize experience, enough betrayal and isolation that you have to become entirely self-reliant as a curriculum. What made you can't be bottled, packaged, or sold, which means you remain singular, irreproducible, impossible to mass produce. So now they're stuck with you, this person whose resume makes no sense, whose background doesn't add up, whose capabilities exceed their models but whose credentials don't satisfy their requirements. And they can't dismiss you because you're too effective, can't ignore you because you solve problems they thought were unsolvable, can't sideline you because you've already demonstrated value that exceeds half their certified staff combined. You're the institutional anomaly, the HR nightmare. The thing that breaks their hiring algorithms because you optimize for variables they never thought to measure. You're proof that their system leaks, that excellence escapes their filters, that sometimes the most capable people are the ones who never asked permission to become capable. And here's where it gets truly dangerous for them. where your presence becomes not just uncomfortable, but actively threatening to their entire organizational philosophy. Because other people see you, watch you operate, notice that you're effective without the credentials they're killing themselves to obtain. They start asking questions, uncomfortable questions like, why am I paying for this degree when that person learned more from necessity? And what if institutional validation isn't actually required for competence? And maybe the gatekeepers are just protecting gates that don't need to exist. You're not trying to undermine their system. You're just existing in it. But your existence is revolutionary simply because it demonstrates alternatives they've spent fortunes pretending don't work. You didn't mean to become a threat to established order, didn't set out to challenge institutional authority, didn't plan to be walking proof that their monopoly on legitimate expertise is fiction. You just survived, learned what you needed to learn, became what you needed to become, and now you're here, carrying capabilities that don't fit their framework, and it's not your fault their framework is incomplete. You're not the problem. Their insistence that there's only one valid path to competence is the problem, and you're the living, breathing evidence that their insistence is wrong. They laughed. Oh, they laughed so hard, didn't they? Thought it was funny, watching you stumble, watching you break. They clinked their glasses, whispered behind closed doors, smirked as they shut you out. You were the evening's entertainment, the fool in their little play. They built the stage, they wrote the script, and they were so damn sure they knew how this story would end. But here's the part they didn't expect. The dead man started breathing. They dug your grave with their words, buried you under their betrayal, stamped you with failure and left you for dead. But what they didn't realize is that some people don't die. Some people transform. Some people take every dagger, every scar, every ounce of disrespect and forge it into something monstrous. You were not destroyed, you were redesigned. Now, look around. Feel it. The silence, the tension, the shift in the air, because suddenly, the joke isn't funny anymore. Suddenly, they're not laughing. Suddenly, the monster they tried to kill is the nightmare staring back at them. And you, oh, you're just getting started. Pain is an artist. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't knock before it enters. No, it kicks the door down, drags you into the fire, and forces you to watch as everything you thought you were burns to ash. It carves, it crushes, it twists the knife until you swear you can't take another second. But pain doesn't stop just because you beg. It doesn't have mercy. And that's exactly why it's the greatest teacher you'll ever have. Most people, they shatter. They break into pieces and spend their lives trying to glue themselves back together, pretending they're whole. But you were different. You didn't just break. You learned. You felt every cut, every betrayal, every moment of being discarded like you were nothing. And instead of crumbling, you let it shape you, turn you into something sharp, something deadly, something that doesn't bow to the weight of the world, but makes the world bow instead. They thought they were hurting you, that every rejection, every loss was another nail in your coffin. They didn't know they were handing you the tools to build something unstoppable. Every scar became armor, every wound a blueprint. And while they sat comfortably in their little lives, laughing at your downfall, you were in the dark, evolving, transforming, becoming something their small minds could never comprehend. The thing about pain is, it doesn't just break people, it also builds them. It's a choice. Stay shattered or become unbreakable. Most people, they let pain consume them, make them weaker. But the ones who refuse to surrender, they don't just survive, they rise. They turn suffering into power, loss into wisdom, and every ounce of heartbreak into a masterpiece of destruction. You were never meant to be ordinary. No one destined for greatness walks an easy road. You were thrown into the abyss for a reason, and while they watched, expecting you to drown, you learned to breathe underwater. The ones who survive hell, they don't come back soft. They don't come back gentle. They come back as fire, and fire doesn't ask for permission. It burns everything in its path. They saw the surface, but never the storm beneath. They looked at you and saw something small, something harmless, a flickering flame they thought would die out with the first gust of wind. They didn't see the inferno lurking underneath, the hunger in your eyes, the chaos stitched into your soul. They mistook your silence for weakness, your patience for fear, and that was their greatest mistake. People love to judge by what they can see, the quiet ones, the outcasts, the ones who don't show their teeth right away. They assume you're harmless because you don't bark back. They assume you're weak because you don't move the way they do. But what they forget is that the deadliest things don't announce themselves. Storms don't knock before they shatter the sky. Fire doesn't ask before it devours everything in its path. And you were never just a flame, you were waiting to erupt. They underestimated you, laughed at you, dismissed you, called you a nobody. They walked past you, never realizing they were passing by something that would one day stand taller than them all. They spent their time feeding their egos, building their castles of illusion, while you were underground, sharpening your mind, strengthening your spirit, becoming something unstoppable. They thought they had the advantage, but what they didn't see was that you were watching, learning, calculating. The best victories don't come from the strongest. They don't come from the ones born into power, handed privilege, or given an easy road. No, the greatest victories come from the ones no one saw coming, the ones who were overlooked, counted out, left behind. Because when those people rise, they don't just climb to the top, they burn the whole damn system down. And now they see you. Now they feel the heat. The fire they ignored has become something they can't escape. You aren't the person they used to laugh at anymore. You aren't the one sitting in the shadows waiting for approval. No, now you are the storm. And when you finally strike, the whole world will remember the name they once tried to forget. They thought rock bottom was the end. You made it your throne. Most people hit the bottom and never rise again. They lie there broken, crying about how unfair life is, begging for a way out. But you didn't beg. You didn't plead. You sat in the darkness, felt every ounce of the pain, and then you smiled because you realized something they never did. Rock bottom isn't the end. It's the beginning. It's where the weak are separated from the strong. It's where the soft ones shatter and the monsters wake up. They wanted you to stay down, wanted you to drown in your failures, suffocate under the weight of their laughter. But they forgot. Pressure doesn't just crush, it creates. It builds warriors. It forges kings. It sharpens the ones who refuse to be destroyed. And you weren't built to be destroyed. You were built to rise from the wreckage, wearing your scars like armor, turning every loss into fuel. See, people fear the fall. They do everything to avoid it, but the truth is, the fall is necessary. It strips away the illusions. It burns off the weaknesses. It forces you to face yourself, the raw, unfiltered, unbreakable version. And once you've seen that, once you've met the version of you that can survive the worst, you become unstoppable. They thought they buried you, thought the weight of failure would crush you, but now you've built your throne out of the rubble. Now you sit atop the empire they swore you'd never have. And the best part, every time they look up, they have to remember that the person they tried to destroy is the one looking down at them with a grin that says, "Thank you for the push." They cast you as the victim. You became the director. From the moment you stepped into this world, they had a script ready for you. They labeled you, boxed you in, told you who you were, what you could be, how far you were allowed to go. Stay in your lane, know your place. You're not good enough. They wanted you to follow their script. Walk when they say walk, bow when they say bow, break when they say break. But what they didn't know is that you never liked playing by the rules. The world loves to hand out roles. Loser, failure, nobody. They love to stamp you with their opinions, as if their small minds could ever define you. But real power? Real power is when you stop letting them narrate your story, when you grab the pen from their hands and start writing in blood, when you rip up their script and set fire to every damn limitation they tried to place on you. They wanted you to be the background character in their story, a cautionary tale, another one of the forgotten. But now they can't ignore you. Now your name is written in bold. Now your story isn't about loss, it's about domination, about someone who refused to be caged, someone who turned every no into a new chapter, every setback into a scene of vengeance. You see, they tried to write your ending, but the mistake they made, they thought they had control. They thought you would play your part like a good little puppet. What they never realized is that you were never the puppet. You were the one pulling the strings, and now they have no choice but to watch as you rewrite the ending, one where they are nothing more than a forgotten footnote in the legend of your rise. Only those who have walked through darkness truly appreciate the light. Most people fear the dark. They run from it, hide from it, beg for an escape, but you learn to walk through it, to breathe it in, to make it your ally. Because the truth is, darkness isn't just suffering, it's a teacher. A brutal, relentless teacher that doesn't care about your comfort, doesn't care about your feelings. It strips you down to nothing, forcing you to see what most people spend their whole lives avoiding. The truth. Pain has a way of sharpening the mind. Struggle has a way of exposing illusions. When you're at your lowest, the masks fall away. You see people for who they really are. You see yourself raw, unfiltered, without the noise of the world telling you who you should be. And in that silence, in that agony, something shifts. You stop looking for a way out and start looking for a way through. The weak ones curse the darkness. They resent it, but the strong learn to see in it. They realize that suffering isn't a prison, it's a path that leads to self-awareness, to wisdom, to an understanding of life that no comfort could ever teach. Because only those who have been blind truly understand sight. Only those who have been broken know what it means to be whole. And only those who have faced death of the body, the mind, the ego, know the taste of true power. They thought your suffering would destroy you, that it would consume you, but instead, it carved something dangerous into your soul. Now, while they still stumble through life, blind and afraid, you see everything. The lies, the illusions, the weak foundations they stand on. And that's why you're unstoppable, because you no longer fear the darkness. You own it. Revenge is small, evolution is eternal. They thought you'd be obsessed with payback, that you'd waste your days plotting their downfall, burning yourself out just to see them suffer. That's how they think. Small, petty, predictable. But you chose something far more dangerous. You didn't waste your time looking back. You focused on something they never expected, becoming untouchable. See, revenge is easy. Anyone can destroy. Anyone can play the same ugly game. But evolution, that takes power. It takes discipline. It takes the kind of mind that knows true dominance isn't about evening the score. It's about making sure they can never sit at your table again. That's why you didn't chase them down. You let them stay where they are, rotting in their own mediocrity, while you ascended to a level they can't even reach in their dreams. The greatest revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving that their opinions never mattered in the first place. It's showing them that while they were busy hating, doubting, underestimating, you were building, sharpening, becoming something greater than they could ever comprehend. Now, they watch in silence. Now, they choke on their own words. Now, their insults feel small because you outgrew the entire battlefield. They expected war. They expected retaliation. But what they got was something worse. They got erased from your world entirely, because the truth is, the highest form of power isn't revenge, it's evolution. And now, while they're still crawling in the dirt, you're standing at the top, smiling, untouchable. At first they doubted you, now they use your name as a warning. Once upon a time, they laughed. They whispered. They called you foolish for daring to dream beyond the limits they set. You were just another nobody in their eyes, someone they could mock, dismiss, underestimate. But now your name isn't just a name, it's a lesson. A cautionary tale of what happens when you push the wrong person too far. They used to say, "You'll never make it." Now they say, "Don't mess with someone like that." They used to ignore you, now they watch from the shadows, studying every move, wondering how the hell you rose from the ashes they buried you in. Your name, once a joke, is now spoken with hesitation, with regret, with a quiet kind of fear. Because you're no longer just a person, you're a statement, a symbol of what happens when resilience meets ruthless ambition. This is the part they never expected. They thought breaking you would be easy, that you'd crumble like the rest. But instead, you became something they never saw coming. Not just successful, not just powerful, but untouchable. The kind of legend that doesn't just win, but leaves an impact so deep, so undeniable, that generations will whisper about it. Because true success isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about making them regret ever doubting you in the first place. And now, every time they hear your name, they remember. Not just who you were, but what they lost when they underestimated the fire inside you. Let them drown in their own regrets while you keep building your empire. They expect a war. They want your anger, your rage, your retaliation. They want to see you break, to hear you scream, to know that their words, their betrayal, their doubt got to you. But what they never understand is that silence is the sharpest blade. It cuts deeper than any insult, louder than any argument. See, when you respond, you give them power. You feed their ego. You show them they still have a piece of your mind. But when you say nothing, when you keep moving, keep building, keep rising without a single glance back, that's when they start to crumble. Because now, they're left alone. alone with their guilt, their regrets, their pathetic little games that didn't work. They sit in their corners, whispering your name, wondering why you're not fighting back, wondering why you don't care. And that's the part that kills them. Because the truth is, you do care, just not about them. You care about your empire, your evolution, your future. And every second wasted on people who never deserved you is a second stolen from your greatness. So you move in silence. You let them talk. Let them assume. Let them drown in the mess they created. And when they finally look up, searching for the person they tried to break, they won't even recognize you. Because you'll be so far ahead, so untouchable, so unstoppable, that the only thing left for them to do is regret. They were the architects of your downfall. Now they're spectators of your rise. Life has a wicked sense of humor, doesn't it? The same people who laughed at your struggles, who whispered behind your back, who took bets on your failure, now they sit in the crowd, silent, watching, stunned, because the very thing they tried to destroy has become something untouchable, something unstoppable, something legendary. They used to control the script. They set the traps, pulled the strings, built the walls meant to cage you in. But what they didn't realize is that you were never meant to play by their rules. You didn't just escape their game, you burned the whole damn board. And now they don't get a say. They don't get a voice. They don't get to be anything more than spectators in your story. Look at them, sitting there, replaying every mistake they made, every doubt they threw your way, every insult, every betrayal, every smug little smirk they once carried so confidently. And now, that confidence is gone, swallowed by the weight of regret, by the slow, painful realization that they weren't just wrong about you. They were your fuel. You didn't just survive. You didn't just recover. You evolved. Every scar became armor. Every loss became a lesson. Every failure, a foundation. They thought they were burying you. What they really did was plant the roots of something they could never control. And now, all they can do is watch. So let them watch. Let them sit in the shadows of your success, haunted by the echoes of their own doubt. Let them whisper your name, not in mockery, but in fear. Let them live with the knowledge that they didn't break you. And now it's your move. This is your final act, your grand crescendo. The story isn't about them anymore. It's about you, the one who rose, the one who thrived, the one who took every ounce of pain, every moment of rejection, every damn tear, and turned it into power. So don't fear the fall. Don't fear the doubt. Don't fear the ones who bet against you. Use it. Transform it. Make them regret ever believing you were anything less than inevitable.